So 3, 2, 1. Ah! Sydney, come here. Right, let's go. Oh, ooh. Ah, right. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. My name is Logan from West Desert Wheeler, and today we are talking again about the Axial Base Camp road base project. So this is an Axial Base Camp rock crawler that I'm working on converting into a no prep RC drag racer. 0 to 132 feet, seeing how fast we can get this thing to get from 0 to 132 feet. So quite a lot has changed since the last time you guys have seen this. Unfortunately, when I get projects like this, I get a little excited and I start changing thing after thing after thing, and I don't do as many video updates as I really should. But we're gonna get you up to speed in this video. So let's take a look at this thing. First off, most noticeably, you're gonna see the black fenders on the rear. So this is an Axial Base Camp body, and I took the Proline Ford Ranger flare kit and actually grafted them onto the side of the base camp. The fender well lined up decent. I had to trim that off, and then I trimmed the front edge of the bedside a little further back. That way there's actually more flare area because the Ranger doesn't have the extended cab. It's a regular cab body. But a little bit of trimming, was able to take care of that. I ended up using shoe goo, E6000 glue, and running a strip along the top of the bedside and down the tailgate. I was struggling to get it to hold together, so I through bolted it to hold it in place for the glue to cure. And then the other side, I just through bolted it and just called that a day. So this is some of the thickest Lexan I've ever seen used on a body. Proline really went for it with these fender flares on this thing. So that's a big change to the truck, and now the tires are fully covered on both sides. You can see that the drag slicks tuck up in there very nicely, and they're just about the right width for the race slicks, no spacers, and then the body with just the flares. So that worked out pretty good. I am pretty happy with how that turned out. Next up, in episode 1, I had not mounted the wheelie bar yet, so let's go ahead and remove the body. And you know what, I'm probably gonna move my camera and give you guys a close-up shot here to take a better look at what's going on. All right, the rear of the truck is what has seen the most changes. So first off, what we did is I took the wheelie bar, which has horizontal mounting holes in this bar to get some screws to go through it. So the first challenge was like, well, I can't screw vertically, it has to be horizontal. So I took some axial rod ends. You can see that there's a rod end coming out the bottom side of the bumper and a rod end coming out the top side. I used an M4 grub screw and was able to thread into both rod ends, basically creating a link where it's only rod ends. And so I drilled a hole in the bumper, threaded one of the grub screws through, and then threaded the other rod end into it. Another trick on these is that these are actually the steering rod ends from Axial, so they've got an offset to one side. And because of the height of this wheelie bar here, I used the angle to try and angle that wheelie bar down as much as possible. It still sits fairly high. I mean, here's with the suspension fully compressed, but it's going to lift the tires off the ground quite a ways before it actually comes in contact with the ground. But we reinforced, I'm just using spare parts that I had laying around. I had quite a few SCX 10.3 panhard mounts laying around, and I have a matching set here. So I connected the top of the wheelie bar, just a longer M3 screw, and through bolted it through the rod end. So one side's the wheelie bar, the other side is this panhard, and it's still got the pivot balls in there, and it's running up to my Rock Pirates RC SCX 10.3 rear shock towers. Because this is an SCX 10.3, I can use 10.3 parts. Rock Pirates was awesome to help make this build possible, and sent over these shock towers for it. So thank you very much, Rock Pirates. Also using their body mounts here to relocate the body posts You can see they're a little tweaked from taking some hits, but that's all right. Those are cheap and easy to do. So wheelie bar is mounted through the rear bumper, which is held into the chassis and then reinforced into the shock towers. So from the bottom, there's pretty minimal deflection. It's not too bad. Obviously there's some, but the majority of it is plastic, so I'm not gonna complain. I ended up cutting off the edges of the bumpers. These used to travel forward, where I had to run the bumper all the way up close to the chassis. The bumpers came in contact with the drag slicks, and so I just decided to chop those off. And with the body on there anyway, the fenders actually cover them up. So that's where the body sits. You couldn't have seen the bumper if it was there anyway. So that's out of the way and less weight, I guess you could say. Moving on forward, or I guess a detail in there that we didn't really cover, I added an element sway bar. So this is off of a Gatekeeper I had sitting around. You can see this thing's got pretty limited suspension travel, and it's a little hard to package this much stuff into such a tight space and still have everything function super well. And then also trying to use rock crawler components to create a good drag race suspension. It is still 4-link back here, and then the sway bar is mounted through the rear of the chassis, and I had to do very short, small Traxxas rod ends and connect those together with an M3, not an M4. So these rod ends are smaller than the normal axial ones to get the short height of the vertical arm so that I can mount these to the upper shock tab on the AR45 straight axle. So normally you only have a link in the lower portion here, and then there's another plastic tab that sits above this link mount that is normally where your shock sits, and that's where the sway bar is connected to. The shocks are mounted to the lower double shear link mount, and that's how like the Capra axles are set up. And what that allows me to do is bolt my shocks through there, which also in turn lowers my ride height. So I drop the shocks down, and then with the Rock Pirates RC towers, I was able to add some angle on there, which helps get them out of the way for the sway bar, angle them forward, also dropping the truck down. Now you can see that I could go lower, but right now I'm running into the issue of I'm so low that the chassis just comes down and hits the axle. So we've got plenty of low. I may have to notch the chassis if I wanted to go lower. I think this height is just fine. I don't think that I'm going to notch the chassis at this point in time. That's not part of the plan. So 4-link rear suspension, battery tray. I've been running full-size battery packs in the rear. Let's talk about the batteries we've been using. Started out with the Smart G2 batteries, 5,000 milliamp 3S packs, and these things are built for this battery tray. Fits like a glove, Velcro strap holds it in, not a problem. Puts the majority of the weight, at least the weight of the battery, on the rear tires, and this thing will pull a wheelie on 3S with the setup that we had. I'm going to talk about that here in just one second. But able to actually rip the front tires off the ground if you get traction. It's also able to absolutely blow the rear tires off, meaning you can spin them very easily, and the truck likes to go sideways and upside down in the air. Moving forward, what kind of system have we got here? We got a Spectrum Firma 130 amp smart brushless ESC. This is essentially the same ESC that comes in a RTR axial rift. So this is capable of 3 and 4S, 130 amp, and then we've got that paired up with a Spectrum non-censored brushless motor. And this one is 3150 kV in here. So pretty spicy motor, not too bad. Got a battery charge there. Not too bad, pretty happy with it. I started out with a 16 tooth pinion, and that was good for probably 12 miles an hour, maybe 15. And then I changed up to a 21 tooth pinion, which made a big difference. And I actually have some times and speeds for 132 feet with that pinion. And I've also got some footage of me drag racing a Bomber with that setup in it. So a Spectrum 3150 kV motor, a 21 tooth pinion, going through the Axial LCXU transmission, which is their new base camp transmission that we've got, which so far this thing's holding up pretty great. No absolutely destroyed gears that I know of. Still runs smooth, sounds good. All is good as far as I know inside that transmission. So With the 21 tooth pinion, we were able to get a 3.7 second run, 0 to 132 feet with a top speed of 29 miles an hour. Unfortunately, that's not a great time. My goal is to get it near 3 seconds or better. 29 miles an hour though is not fast enough for a fast no prep car. However, I'm going 0 to 29 miles an hour in less than 1.4 seconds. So I'm doing it in about 1.2. That's where it maxes out on speed. So after 1.2 seconds, this car is no longer accelerating and is just driving down the 132 feet. Battery number 2 is done. So if we can get this thing to have more top end, we can accelerate 0 to 29 in 1.2 and hopefully continue on to a top speed of 45 or 50 or so if this truck will handle that. Now, those times were posted up with the 21 tooth pinion in there with a 3S battery pack, that smart battery over there with a 50C discharge rate. I want to talk about the change I've made since then. After that, I actually added a sway bar. The running footage does not have a sway bar and it will torque twist pretty bad. Got it set up with the sway bar now, as I already showed you, and we bumped up the pinion size even more. So this thing is running a massive 27 tooth pinion, 32 pitch, going into the axial transmission there. It's hilarious how big that pinion is because most of my crawlers I run small, and so I can get low speed control, but this thing we're looking to get some real speed. I took it out to race it and get some times, thanks to Sky RC for providing me with this Power Hobby GNSS performance analyzer. This thing got up to 33 miles an hour within the 132 feet. I was starting off with a real soft pass and I was getting towards the end of the track and I was like, all right, man, I need to get on this and go. And so within the last probably 30 or 40 feet, I laid into the throttle. At 33 miles an hour, it blew the rear tires off, rolled and flipped, and I broke 3 rod ends and bent 2 links on this truck in one tumble. So I'm used to rock crawling where things don't break that much, but apparently at 33 miles an hour when you take a tumble, it's a little different than sitting still and tipping over. No surprise there. But 27 tooth pinion going into this setup on a 4S battery. So we've got a real serious battery. Again, Sky RC let me take this one for a little bit. This one's got a 40C discharge, but when you're talking that much more voltage, every volt that you pump into this thing, it gives you more RPM in your motor. So kV, this is a 3,150 kV. That's how many RPM you get per volt. So when you jump up from 3S to 4S, you're getting an extra 3.7 volts sent to your motor. So you're gonna see a big difference in top speed out there on the track. And unfortunately, I don't know how fast this thing will go. I know it goes significantly faster than 33 miles an hour. I'm thinking that with this gearing setup and this battery, this truck's top speed should be capable of somewhere near 40 to 50 miles an hour is my guess, because it had a lot left in it at 33 miles an hour, so much so that it just absolutely took off and destroyed itself. So let's see here. What were some of my times I was able to pull off? Yeah, unfortunately I didn't get any times on that, just got the 33 miles an hour, but it wasn't a great pull because I was first pass of the day, really just trying to take it easy and get a feel for the new system. So at this point, we're kind of caught up. That's what this SCX-10.3 from Sky RC Hobby Shop has shaped up to be. This is Sky RC's truck, so thank you very much, Cody. Sky RC Hobby Shop in St. George, Utah. If you guys are ever in the area, stop by and check them out. Say what's up. Cody can get you helped out with whatever crazy project you've got going on. I guess some other changes we can cover is in the front end of the truck, because I have made some changes there as well. Tucked away behind the shocks up here, I had an extra set of D's Company shock bands. You can find D's Company on Facebook and Instagram, DEEZ Company EE. So Dustin over there got me set up with some shock bands for this truck. And the idea of shock bands on this is that I want it to help pull the front end of the truck down when racing. I want it to hold the truck down, which is exactly what these elastic bands do, mounted up to your front shocks. Helps compress it. It's similar to a pen spring mod, but you get the full travel of your shocks with the D's Company shock bands. Great for crawlers as well. I had them on the shelf, threw them on the drag truck. I'm pretty happy with what they're doing on the drag truck. Another thing we did, we took out the guts of the front axle. So it's no longer got the universal shafts going into the differential. This is a rear wheel drive only truck, which is why we've only got slicks on the rear. There's no more ring and pinion in here, just left the bearing in there for whatever reason. We took some standard cup and ball style drive shafts off an SCX 10.2, so the non-universal side, and then we just didn't install the extra shafts. Now there wasn't quite enough clearance on that to let it freely spin, so I had to sand down the backside of the wheel hex to allow it to freely spin like that. So now we've got nice and smooth bearings up front, no rolling resistance in the front end. This thing glides down the track at this point. This thing has taken some tumbles and the body's starting to get some wear on it. I'm hoping it will last a few more passes though, because I want it to retain the base camp look, and we've got to get down to 3 seconds in the 132 feet. But we've got the 4S pack, we've got a great big pinion in there. It's ready to go set a new record for itself. We're gonna have to find out where that leaves it. So I'm gonna throw a bunch of footage in here of the base camp versus the bomber. Shout out and thank you to my buddy Camera Dan out there. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, Dan, for racing me with my own bomber against the base camp. So that's one thing we should talk about, is what were the times of the base camp and the bomber. Again, going back to that best pass of 3.7 seconds with this, again, hitting that 29 miles an hour in 1.2 seconds and then really just driving down the rest of the track at full speed. The bomber is a zippy truck. It's fun. It's really fun off-road, but in the drag strip, its top speed is 25 miles an hour and it does 132 feet in 4.25 is my best on record that I have. So the base camp has beaten the bomber. There we go. And that was with the first round of upgrades. Now we've got even more on it, so it should really get out there and put a hurting on the bomber if they were to race again. So from there, guys, that is our update. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I greatly appreciate you stopping by. Huge shout out and thank you to Sky RC. They are the ones making this crazy, dumb idea possible, and I really appreciate it. So thanks to Axial Support, they were able to help me out with getting the Spectrum system in here, as well as just some parts on the truck here. Yeah, really cool. This is an Axial base camp, C-channel chassis. It's so funny, this truck's all used, but the skid plate still looks brand new. I drive rock crawlers all the time. Usually that's one of the first things to get all beat up. It's just a goofy little detail that I think is pretty funny. Of course, we still got our little D-rings back here on our bumper and a hitch receiver. Maybe somebody out there can lead me to a hitch receiver mounted parachute pack. I would throw that on there just for the looks. I think it would be cool. Well, all right, guys, that's going to wrap it up. My name is Logan with West Desert Wheeler. Be sure to hit the affiliate links down below. Check out Sky RC's Facebook, linked down below. You can also check out my website, westdesertwheeler.com, and we will see you guys in the next one. Keep the rubber side down.